The Rob Lowe investigation continues with 1986's About Last Night, a romantic drama involving young professionals, poor decisions, emotional damage, and what feels like one long first date that starts out fun and doesn't end until everybody is shattered. We've seen Rob Lowe trapped in higher learning institutions and murder conspiracies, but here Rob Lowe finds himself trapped inside a much more volatile situation. Adulthood. Everybody agrees. Rob Lowe needs to change. The problem is, into what? Honestly, we don't really have an answer. Research finding. The people around Rob Lowe are often absolutely certain he needs to change while remaining surprisingly vague about what the upgraded version is supposed to look like, as the current version is Rob Lowe. He honestly has nowhere to go. He has confidence, charm, friends. He dreams of opening his own restaurant despite displaying a severe lack of interest and what appears to be borderline disgust in cooking for people. He clearly has passion. Okay, maybe it's unconventional passion and mostly expressed as anger against his best friend, his girlfriend, her roommate, his boss, mild stalking of his ex, assaulting her boss at a Christmas party, and occasionally throwing the objects off of his desk and breaking bottles in the street. Passion is passion, isn't it? Isn't it? This is also the oldest Rob Lowe has looked in any film we've investigated so far, which sounds strange considering he was about 22. For a man who appears destined to spend the next 40 years looking suspiciously unchanged, he looks exhausted here, physically, existentially, because adulthood has arrived all at once. The office job, the compromise. When Demi Moore threw out that beanbag chair, we felt it. Where's he supposed to get his lovemaking on now? Other than the bathtub, of course. And later, with another woman, what appears to be a white bearskin rug in front of a fireplace, he went out, bought that bearskin rug as an urgent lovemaking expense, rolled it up, and carried it home. Now, we could talk about the movie. The movie is excellent. The writing is excellent. And perhaps for the first time in the investigation, Rob Lowe isn't trying to get into something. He's trying to survive staying there. One of the strangest things about the film is that this may be the closest we've seen Rob Lowe come to being an adorable prick. Not dangerous, not mysterious, just a guy who can be selfish, stubborn, immature, and occasionally infuriating. The entire movie has the ongoing feud between Rob Lowe and Debbie's best friend. It's almost as though she has discovered a certain freedom in not liking Rob Lowe. And Rob Lowe appears both relieved and intrigued by the discovery that somebody somewhere simply doesn't like him. So every time they see each other, they become slightly more hostile, and somehow, despite all of this, we still like him, which is concerning. Now, he's still got the moves. There's that whole dual headphone first date thing he's got in his apartment so that you and he can listen to music together and you can look directly at Rob Lowe without Rob Lowe needing to hear you talk. And perhaps that's why the entire movie feels like a first date that escaped containment. The attraction, the excitement, the chemistry remains, but the date just keeps going and going and going until eventually it starts collecting apartments, responsibilities, fights, emotional baggage. Meanwhile, for all his life aspirations, Rob Lowe remains at his core a guy who casually steals wholesale food products from his work and fills his cupboards. The man literally has what looks like gallons of tomato sauce. His best friend casually steals enough dishes to furnish an entire restaurant. Neither man appears especially troubled by any of this, and somehow neither are we. The movie has a remarkable ability to make terrible decisions feel oddly reasonable. Research finding. Rob Lowe can travel much further into unlikability than most leading men before we finally abandon him. At one point, Rob Lowe spends New Year's Eve making out with another woman at a party. And yet we experience relief because Rob Lowe finally appears comfortable again. It's like watching a professional athlete return to his natural position after attempting something fundamentally outside of his training. Ah, there he is. The same phenomenon occurs later when Rob Lowe, heartbroken and soaking wet from the rain, shows up to romantically harass Debbie in public after she has explicitly told him on the phone not to contact her again, but she'll talk with him. Because from what I'm seeing so far, restraining orders might have just been harder to get in the 1980s. The movie slowly becomes less about whether these people are in love and more about watching both of them crumble. The certainty, the confidence, the relationship crumbles, and as much as they have done their best to hide it, their disdain for each other becomes as clear as Rob Lowe's bare ass at the 52-minute mark. Research finding: Rob Lowe is remarkably good at getting what he wants. The trouble begins immediately afterwards. Throughout the investigation, we've watched Rob Lowe gain access to things that should theoretically solve his problems. The challenge never seems to be acquisition. The challenge is maintenance. About Last Night may be the first film in which Rob Lowe discovers that obtaining adulthood and successfully operating it are entirely different life skills. And perhaps that's why the ending works. Not because we think the relationship is fixed. Frankly, this relationship is doomed. But when Debbie finally agrees to see him again, we're genuinely happy. Not that they'll end up together. They won't. Not that they've solved adulthood. We're just happy that Rob Lowe might get a pleasant evening out of the whole thing. There are a lot of Rob Lowe movies left. We'll continue the investigation.